I waited anxiously for the official to announce who won first place. Could this Canadian dad and his army buddies win first place on a cheap offset smoker? Yes, and by first place I mean first place brisket and a bunch of other awards. So how did I do it, and can you replicate my success on your own cheap offset smoker? Let's end the video here and not find out. Wait. No, that's not it. Let's break it down into 6 easy steps you can follow to become a barbecue champion. That's Canadian for barbecue champion. Step 1, assemble your team. If you're gonna be cooking on a cheap offset smoker, you need a team to tend the fire so you can actually get some sleep. It could be your wife, it could be your friends, it could be your parents. It doesn't matter as long as they're committed to helping you and they're fully invested. When I competed in my first competition as Smoke Trails Barbecue, I didn't get any sleep overnight, and when it came to turn-in time the next day, I was a mess. I couldn't do anything, and that's a big reason why I came last in every single category and did terrible in that competition. I failed so bad that when my army buddies came to ask me to form a new competition team, I said no. I didn't want to fail that hard again, but then this happened.
Our main story this morning, the Taliban have seized control of Afghanistan.
For 20 years, Afghanistan has had stability, democracy, and relative safety. It's all ended in a matter of days.
As veterans of the war on terror in Afghanistan, this hit us really hard, and it made us question whether our sacrifice had meant anything at all. My buddy Mark sacrificed more than most of us. He lost both of his legs in an IED strike, and some of our friends didn't make it back at all. So with all this happening as a veteran, it was very hard not to feel like a loser, and I really wanted to give my buddies a win. And at the very least, we could all be together for a weekend and have a great time. And as an added benefit, when you form a new team, you get to go through the fun process of picking a new team name. Hey guys, so we need to think of a competition name. I think a good name is probably Smoke Trails Barbecue.
How about Chef Party Boy?
No, it needs to be Chef Boy Party.
Ah, that's it.
Well, seeing as how we're all BFFs, I think we should name the team the BFFs.
Well, the BFFs is that's the name of our gaming group.
Yeah, so it's already perfect.
Yeah, I guess.
Done.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, cool. So we'll be the BFFs, I guess.
Yep. What are we cooking? Is this hamburgers?
No, dude, this is
Hamburgers. Oh.
Step 2, take a course. In my first competition, I wanted to win so bad. So I did what any winner would do. I Googled competition barbecue recipes and I cobbled together some recipes and sauces and rubs, and I did everything myself. Big mistake. For this competition, I smartened up and I spent the money on a course from an actual barbecue competition team that I found online. The one I took was from thebarbecueleague.com. I used all of their techniques, I used some of their spices, I used their rubs and their sauces, but most importantly, I had a base of which I could modify and I could adapt it for my cheap offset smoker and all of the spices and rubs and sauces that I had locally, because I couldn't get everything that they used in their videos. Step 3, create a detailed plan. With your newfound knowledge that you've learned from your course, you're going to have to adapt it to your situation. In the course I took, they all competed on drum smokers, so they cooked hot and fast, and that is not going to work on a cheap offset smoker, and here's why. At a KCBS competition, KCBS stands for Kansas City Barbecue Society, at these competitions, there's 2 days. There's the day before turn-in. That's when you arrive, you set up, you prep all of your meat, you start cooking later that night, potentially, if you're doing low and slow. And then there's the day of turn-in. So that's the day when you finish cooking, you prep your boxes, and you turn in your meats to the judges. Now, there are 4 turn-in times, and they might differ depending on the competition you go to, but at the competitions that I go to, they are chicken at noon, there's ribs at 12:30, at 1 p.m. is pork, and at 1:30 is brisket. Each category of meat is going to take a different amount of time to finish it. Brisket and pork is going to take the most amount of time. If you're cooking low and slow, it'll take 10 to 15 hours. Ribs take a bit longer, maybe 5 to 6 hours. And then chicken is the shortest of all. Usually it only takes 2 or 3 hours max. So you have to have all of these meats finished before the turn-in time. So you actually have at least 20 minutes to prep your boxes and then have your runner take it to the judge's tent to turn in. And there's a couple of strategies that you can use to do this. The first method is what I call the nick of time method. And that's where you finish each category of meat exactly 20 to 30 minutes before the turn-in time. This is obviously the hardest method to do because, for example, a brisket might finish in 10 hours or 15 hours. Even ribs might finish in 4 hours, or they might need up to 6 hours to finish and get to the right tenderness that you want. This is the method that I used in my first competition, and it's a big reason why I lost and I did so poorly. The problem is when you get to your turn-in time, and let's say your brisket still needs another 5 hours and it's way too tough, then you're gonna get scored really poorly by the judges. There's an old saying in barbecue competitions that over beats under. And what that means is it's better to overcook your meat than to undercook it, because a judge is more willing to give you better tenderness and maybe even taste scores for a piece of meat that is overcooked than undercooked. The second method is what most people do. It's the cook and hold method. So you finish all of your meats way ahead of time, so your brisket is done up to 5 hours before its turn-in time, and then you hold it in a cooler or a Cambro or maybe even a pellet smoker that is set to like a really low temperature, like 150 to 175. The third method is a bit of a modification on the cook and hold method. It's where you finish your meat way earlier, you put it in a cooler or a Cambro, but when the meat temperature gets down to 145, it gets to that food safe danger zone, and you still have a few more hours until turn-in, you have to take that meat out, you have to put it back on the smoker, and you have to bring up the temperature a little bit more so that you can get up back to a safe temperature of 145, 150, and then you can put it back in the cooler. So that's a method that I use sometimes because I have a cheap cooler. I don't have like a Yeti cooler that holds heat for a really long time. All of this is made much more complicated with a cheap offset smoker because you don't have enough room to cook all of the meat at the same time. So you need to finish your brisket and your pork before you do your ribs and your chicken. And while you're finishing your ribs and your chicken, your pork and brisket has to be holding in a cooler. Step 4, train like you fight. Like they say in the Army, you train like you fight like you train. What that means is at the competition, you're not gonna magically rise to the occasion and win the entire competition if you haven't exactly practiced your plan to a T, doing everything from getting your teammates over to your house and doing a practice session overnight. And then when you wake up in the morning, you go into your routine of holding the brisket and pork in a cooler and going into cooking your ribs and your chicken, and then prepping your boxes. So getting your greens, whether you're using parsley or kale or green leaf lettuce or something like that, having your team know how to prep the boxes, and then you have mock turn-in times where you, under competition conditions, are preparing your boxes and turning them in and timing yourself. That's what it takes to win. You have to practice under real life conditions. All right, guys, so we did the barbecue competition 2 years ago, and I'm not gonna lie, we did really bad, and I'm pissed off about it. Blair, are you pissed off about it?
We did good in pork.
We didn't even get called though, so this time I really want to do a good job. I want to win, I want to get called. So no drinking before 6 p.m. I don't want anyone, don't laugh. This is serious. This is serious. And
no drinking, this is barbecue, man.
Yeah, no.
We're only human, mate.
We got to follow the schedule. I've got the schedule.
Okay.
And you
what
guys
about light beer? Light beer.
Oh, that's barely beer, so you
okay. Does whiskey count as beer? Does rum count as beer?
And just listen to me, do what I say. I'm the head cook. That's why I'm wearing this shirt.
Yes, chef.
I'm the alpha wolf.
Yes, chef.
And on the motorcycle, you guys are the beta wolves. This is like a Harley, you guys have like a Yamaha.
I do have a Yamaha.
All right, guys, we did really good today. I'm gonna taste the chicken now. Okay, look at this. It's covered in parsley.
Yeah,
this is unacceptable. Guys, if we want to win this competition, the judges are going to dock us points or something like that, so we got to figure it out. We got to be the best.
be the best, you gotta beat the rest. You gotta take your barbecue all the way to Valhalla, to the realm of the gods. You gotta learn to boil, you gotta learn to toil, you gotta probe for tenderness, or the judges will hate you, and so will your team. And you can never, 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 ever, never, 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 never drink any booze until at least 6 p.m. You wanna roll with the dogs, you gotta ride a Harley, you gotta practice every day, and at the end of it you'll be a barbecue master. Hey, yeah.
Step 5, prepare, prepare, prepare. This is so important. You need to start early and check off everything on your equipment list. Make sure you have a place to pack it and store it. Don't bring anything extra that you don't need. You'll just drown in extra equipment and stuff, and it'll make it really hard to find stuff, and you'll just feel like you're not as efficient as you could be. So just only take what is on your equipment list. If you have friends joining you, you can make a Google spreadsheet, and you can ask them to collaborate and make a mark on what sort of things they have. So if one guy has a fire extinguisher, they'll bring that, and if you have the tent, you'll bring the tent. Make sure that in a lot of competitions you need to have a fire-rated tent. So before you buy one of those cheap tents on Amazon, make sure you go with one of the more expensive ones that's actually fire-rated. Otherwise, you might not be able to use it at the competition. The other thing is preparing your meat well in advance. So most competition teams, they start the Wednesday before a competition or even the Sunday before. I start well in advance. For this last competition, it was a double header, so that means 2 competitions back to back. So I actually started trimming all of my meat the Sunday before, and chicken takes the longest. Depending on how you're prepping your chicken, you can either use meat glue, a jacquard, or you can scrape. Just look those things up. Harry Sue's got a channel, a bunch of YouTube videos on how to do those methods. I personally like to scrape my chicken skin, and that takes the longest amount of time. It takes hours and hours and hours to get the chicken skin to a point where you want it. Then I vac seal everything, and then I put it in a really cold separate fridge, and it awaits the competition. So make sure you start well in advance, because the worst thing that can happen is it is the day before the competition and you're scrambling to get everything together and you're still trimming your meat. Don't do that. Just prep everything in advance, vac seal it, label it, have it all good to go. One thing I should mention is you can have your brisket point and your brisket flat separate, and that's how I cooked mine in this competition. You cannot separate your pork butt in any way. It has to be, I think, at least, I'm gonna say 5 pounds. It might be 4 pounds, but I'm gonna say 5 pounds just to be safe. Step 6, follow your plan, but adapt as needed. No plan survives first contact with the enemy. Things will go wrong, expect them to, and try to stay calm. You're here to have fun as well as compete, and if you're stressed out, your teammates are gonna have a really bad time, especially if you have your wife helping you or one of your family members. You don't wanna stress them out. They're not as heavily invested in this whole barbecue competition thing as you are, so most importantly, make sure that you give them a fun time and you're not always stressed out, so they actually come back and they wanna do it with you again. You guys ready?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. There we go.
Oh, sweet. What? Dude.
You don't like it? It's the BFF logo that we designed.
Okay, but you said we were competing under BFFs, not Smoke Trail.
Yeah, no, the BFFs and Smoke Trails Barbecue in the corner. It's just a sponsored kind of situation.
It looks like Smoke Trails Barbecue
And the BFFs.
That's not the way I read it. The BFFs featuring Smoke Trails Barbecue is just a, I didn't put the and in the right place maybe. What I do is I get my team together at certain points of the competition, and I take out a whiteboard and I brief them on the next steps of the plan. So for example, right after meat inspection at around noon on the day before meat turn-in, I will write the schedule out for my team. I'll let them know what I'm expecting of them. So I want them to do the dishes, or I want them to prepare some injections that I'm going to inject the brisket or the pork or the ribs with. To be the best, you must first do the dishes. Mark, are you doing the dishes?
Yeah.
You should be doing the dishes.
I'm doing dishes. Doesn't look like you're doing the dishes.
And then at 8 p.m., I write out the new schedule that is for the overnight smoke, so everyone knows when they are expected to be awake and managing the fire, when people are sleeping, what they need to do, what's going to happen, all the way up until 7 a.m. in the morning. What I do at 8 p.m. is I put my big meats on, I put my brisket on, I put my pork on. I do 2 pork butts because I want 2 money muscles for medallions when I turn them in. So I put the pork butts closest to the firebox on my Oklahoma Joes. The money muscle is facing away, the fat cap is down. So those pork butts and the fat cap facing down are protecting the rest of the meat from the hot direct heat from the firebox. I put the brisket point and flat at the far back of the Oklahoma Joes because I really want to protect that brisket. I spritz my brisket and my pork butts every 30 to 40 minutes around the edges if they're getting dried out, and I'll rotate them. So I'll rotate the point and the flat around at the back, and then I'll rotate the pork butts. But I never have the money muscle directly facing the firebox. It's always at an angle on one side or directly facing away from it. And I just do this so it cooks more evenly. The spritzing prevents the edges from drying out, but it also slows down the cooking process a little bit, which is a good thing because on a cheap offset smoker, it's really easy to get everything on the firebox side of the smoker burnt to a crisp, and then everything on the left-hand side of the smoker isn't actually getting any smoke. So you will have to rotate things and spritz and try to control the environment in the smoker. Now, when my brisket and my pork butts are on the smoker at 8 p.m., I put my little meter probe in one of the pork butts so I can monitor remotely the temperature of the chamber. So if I'm sleeping, I have an alarm that wakes me up if the temperature goes above like 350. That's like worst case scenario. I need to get up and go do something. And it's a really good thing that I did because my friends were enjoying themselves a little bit too much, and they weren't managing the fire the way that I had told them to. So my alarm woke me up and I was able to go out and open up the firebox lid and get the fire under control, and then go back to bed after that, after reprimanding my friends a little bit.
We were actually actively watching. We just got talking to Jen for like 10 minutes and got out of control.
And
It's okay.
it wasn't even that. We were actively watching it. Like I don't know why
put it,
it gave you alarm.
Yeah, you gotta babysit these things.
So then at midnight, I get up and I relieve my friends. They go to bed, I get up for a shift, and I will check my pork and my brisket for the bark to be set. So when I scrape it and with my fingernail and the bark is set and the color looks good, then I'll wrap it tightly in foil, and then I will put it back on the smoker, and I'll run the smoker until about 4 in the morning when my buddies will get up again, and I'll go get some sleep until about 6 a.m. when I wake up, and then the brisket and the pork, it should be done by this point. So you should be able to probe it, and it's like butter, it's at the right consistency where you want it. Take it out, put it in your cooler to hold, put a temperature probe in it so you can monitor the temperature, and then your ribs go on right away. I did 3 racks of ribs. They go on the cheap offset smoker, in this case my Oklahoma Joes, and I smoke them for about 3 to maybe 4 hours, probably less than that, just until the bark is set. Again, I'll wrap them, I'll finish them. Concurrently, while my ribs are cooking, maybe about 3 hours before chicken turn-in time at noon, I'll put my chicken in for about 20 to 30 minutes just to get some nice color on them. And then I'll put them in pans, and I'll put them into the Oklahoma Joes on the firebox side. Chicken needs a higher temperature than the rest of your meat. It needs to be at least 300 because you really want to break down all of the fat in the skin, most importantly, and the rest of the thigh, so that when the judges bite into the skin, it doesn't all come off like rubber in their mouth. So usually I'll take my chicken up to 203 degrees Fahrenheit. You don't just want to cook it to 165. Otherwise, it's not going to be what the judge is expecting. Now, between 7 a.m. and around 11:30 a.m., at some point during that period, I'll write out the schedule again, and I'll brief my team on what's expected of them, what's going to happen, when the turn-in times are, who's going to be the timekeeper, the runner who takes the actual meat to the judges, who is making sure all of the turn-in boxes are perfect and they're ready to go and things are clean, People are doing dishes to get dishes out of the way and making sure that I have everything I need, like gloves and knives and sauces. And everyone knows exactly what they're doing. And this is so important because once you hit 7 a.m. on the day of turn-in, that's kind of when game time kicks in. Everyone needs to be super focused and you need to be working towards a common goal because otherwise people are going to start getting stressed out, and you, most of all, are going to get really stressed out if you don't have that schedule sorted out. And most importantly, right before your first turn-in at noon, you should have a little bit of a celebration or a pump up. Get people really energized because people might not have got a lot of sleep. You probably didn't get a lot of sleep the night before. So do something that's going to energize you.
One, two, three.
Now, don't be afraid to adapt your plan if you need to. We were lucky enough to have participated in a double header competition. So in the first day of the competition, we got 3rd place brisket, and we didn't do very well in some other categories. So I actually, on the fly, the morning of the second competition, I changed up our finishing powder and a bunch of other things for our brisket, and I didn't overcook my brisket and my pork butt as much. On the first day, I had used our pellet smokers that we had available. We had a Traeger and a little Pit Boss. I used those for holding the meat because it got done so early. The pork and the brisket got done early, and I held it at around 175 degrees Fahrenheit in the Traeger. But what happened is it overcooked because that wasn't a low enough temperature. The Traeger doesn't go low enough to hold meat properly, and it resulted in the pork and the brisket being a little bit overcooked. So the second competition, I switched up some of the sauces and some of the finishing powder and some of the taste profiles, and I just used the cooler resting method. And at one point I had to take the brisket and the pork and put it back on our offset smoker to warm up a little bit. But everything was kept at a food safe temperature. And I think that is one of the big reasons that we did so well, because we were able to adapt our process and our techniques on the second day.
Okay, so what's the AAR, Steve?
I don't know. You changed the finishing powder. You changed the finishing powder.
I think it was kale.
And first place brisket, the BFF.
Oh man! Yeah! Yeah!
All right, guys, now that you have your ice cream, how do you feel?
Good.
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 I bought the whole team ice cream because they did such a good job.
I'm a little disappointed because any other place than first is a loser.
No, Mark, it's about the experience and the journey of brain freeze.
I'm just reiterating what you said.
Of growth.
I'm just reiterating.
We're competing against ourselves to grow and advance.
Coach, I'm just telling you what you said to us before every competition.
We got first. We got Rookie of the Year. We were the only rookies of the year.
No, but remember you told us
Are we Harley Davidsons yet?
No, you're still Yamahas.
Remember you told us before every competition how much we suck and that anything other than first, we might as well just quit barbecue and start.
No, I didn't say that. I've been an inspiring leader the whole time.
Oh, okay. Is this mine?
That ice cream actually really hit the spot.
Whose beer is this?
My beer.
Oh, well, there you go.
Now check out this video, guys, if you're looking for a method to manage your fire on a cheap offset smoker. And join me on my Patreon channel. I'll link it in the description section below. If you're really interested in competing in your first barbecue competition, I'd be happy to chat with you and share some information and give you access to like my equipment list and my techniques and the rubs I used. Just let me know and we'll chat. There's a private Discord server that we have and it'll be awesome. We'll be best friends. Take care, guys, and happy smoking.